Welcome back to another edition of the Sports Atlanta's Seed Talk podcast. I'm your host, Sterling Mack. We're just going to do a quick little thing here on the NBA's new biomechanics initiative, what that means, some of the companies that are kind of in that space. Something that we do at Sports Atlanta is kind of help early stage startups to find partners, to find funding. So I thought it'd be interesting for a quick little deep dive on kind of what we know within the space, what the league is doing. And so if you're a company out there that's interested or you just love the NBA, this should be kind of fascinating for you here. So the league is officially rolling out a full-scale biomechanics assessment program. And it's way bigger than load management or kind of the wearable sensors, right? Like they've got a partnership, they being the NBA have a partnership with Oura Ring. But it's really going to reshape, I think, how teams look at injury prevention, how they optimize performance, but also obviously how they look at the schedule, how they look at the amount of games that they play, the travel, all these things. One team that's really popped up here as of recent is the Warriors, who have already played, I believe, 3 back-to-backs, right? Which is crazy. They've been on this really long road trip. Everybody sat out a night ago or so when they played against the Heat. And that's when a lot of this is popping up, where Steve Kerr's saying, hey, these soft tissue injuries are happening because our pace is it's just so different. And it is, right? The NBA plays at a pace that I don't think really people understand of how much movement, because of this 5 outs that the NBA has gone to, because everyone on the floor has the ability to put the ball on the deck, to make a move, to be able to shoot it, how much ground you have to cover throughout the game has really changed what the NBA player has to go through, what their body is kind of going through. And then you kind of add in the travel and playing game, like I said, playing back to back. So what we saw last night is Shams of ESPN reporting that the NBA has already run more than 500 players through a round of biomechanical testing, and there are 4 more rounds scheduled throughout the season. This is the first time the NBA has ever deployed mechanics at the league level across every team. Again, soft tissue injuries are exploding here. Hamstring injuries, calf strains, groin issues, you name it, right? Big name stars, Wemby, Ja, Bam, Anthony Edwards early in the season on hamstring injury. So it's tough, right? And you have all these new TV partners. You got Amazon, you got Peacock. ESPN's obviously still there. Thank goodness Stephen A. Smith is no longer on Countdown. And so now they're trying to figure out, what does this mean, right? And so what is biomechanics testing? It's think kind of force plates, think 3D motion capture, analyzing how you jump, cut, land, accelerate, and even the fatigue changing how your movement patterns over time, right? So biomechanics looks for asymmetrics between the left and the right leg, compensations after previous injuries, poor landing mechanics, knee valgus, that knee kind of collapsing inward. Think about squat or again, when you kind of land, how much force you generate on each step or each jump. And then again, how fatigue affects your movement in the second half of kind of a movement, right? So if you're tired, and then if you if you have a baseline and you get tired, can you still kind of create that same force, things of that nature? So, I think this is a wave that's been here, but there's companies that have already, really been in this space and been doing it for a while, right? So, Connection is an NBA partner. They've been around, I think, since the bubble, right, where their wearables track real-time movement, movement load, accelerations, decels, jump counts, kind of all the stuff you need to understand in terms of fatigue, and again, kind of your baselines. P3, which is Peak Performance Project, one of the bigger names of basketball biomechanics. They've tested hundreds of NBA athletes using 3D motion capture and force plates. If you ever seen those viral videos of players jumping with sensors, that is P3. Hawken Dynamics, which they make portable force plates, massive in college and pro locker rooms. Teams use these for jump testing, asymmetry monitoring, and performance readiness. Uplift Labs, which is really cool tech. No sensors needed, just 2 iPhones, kind of capturing 3D mechanics. Teams love this because it's fast, it's mobile. Sparta Science is another one. I can't say this one. I've seen it a few times. It's kinetic. It feels like you want to say kinetic, but it's kinet and then sense. Okay, but that's great for like scanning hips, knees, ankles, spotting asymmetrics or asymmetries that show up later as soft tissue kind of problems. So, what does this all mean, right? As more companies are trying to do this, as the NBA is testing, it's this really interesting shift, right, into understanding, well, if a player profile is trending towards like 12% injury risk, then we need to modify what their workload is. We need to modify, the minutes that they're playing. And that's going to change everything around the NBA, right? If you have this, again, they've had this testing for a while. They've been doing things behind the scenes. NBA has like their NBA Launchpad, NBA equity that are really working with early stage startups within the biomechanics and obviously kind of across the landscape of sports to understand a lot of these things, to be able to kind of help their players understand kind of where we are going now. And so I do think what's going to kind of happen here, Spo said it, I don't know if there's going to be a change in like the dollars, but I do think there's going to be a change in what we see, how we look at the word kind of load management, how we kind of talk about injury prevention. I think that's what the NBA is trying to get to, right? Is like true kind of player health and player safety and kind of risk profiles here. Part of that is a little difficult. My brother had said this earlier on one of our podcasts. Again, all of the Sea Talk podcasts you can find on Spotify, Apple, wherever you kind of get your pods. And he made a great point about this. When you do get so granular with the data, like the NBA has like the 65 game rule in order to be up for NBA awards, which also kind of affects future contracts and money down the line, right? That is kind of an interesting thing. And what that means in terms of like, if we're creating these baselines and your percentages have dropped and they decide to keep you out of game or they decide to change something and you don't hit certain metrics within your contract, there's a financial value to this as well for the players that is a little tricky, I think, to kind of discuss. At the end of the day, you want people to be healthy and you want them to be on the court, be able to play as long as they wish to. I think, but there's also maybe kind of a sinister side to this as well, right? Having so much data on each player and what that means for the value of contracts and incentives and things like that down the line. So check this out again. Connect with us at Sports Tech Atlanta. Follow us for things like this. We are in the sports technology space. Work with, like I said, work with early stage startups, work with leagues, teams, municipalities, kind of you name it, to kind of broker some of these deals, create these partnerships around what is sports technology.